Hey, it's Aaron from GameEnthus.com, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about Dulce. Dulce is a wonderful player engine building game designed by Julio Nazario with art from Justine Nortjé. I'm pronouncing that correctly. In Dulce, players are going to be creating engines to create wonderful and delectable desserts. But ultimately, this confectionery competition really comes down to who earns the most points. Let me show you how it works. A round will work like this. Let's say the green player is the starting player. The round will begin with the draw phase, meaning the player would pick up one of the cards at the top of their deck and say what the number is. This is macarons, and it is 19. So every other player would search for 19 in their deck. Hopefully you put them back in order. They do come in order, but you can do what you want. And I'll just put these to the side for right now. So everybody has macarons. So the draw phase has happened. Then we get to what's called the action phase. In the action phase, you have several choices. You can build a cafe. Building a cafe means you would take the card, and on the cafe side, you would just place it next to your board or in front of you or what have you, in your area. This particular cafe needs level 2. The levels, let me get to that. All the resources on the cafe side of the cards have different levels. So this is the same cards, this one is green, one's blue. So this is a level 2 vanilla. You can see there's 2 circles around it, if you will. A graphic should be on screen to help you with that. And this is a level 3 cacao. You can see that by the 3 different circles around the cacao there. Okay, planting a field. If you flip over these cards, you will see different fields, and the different fields correspond to the boards in front of you that I somehow, in describing the components, I mentioned the boards. I just mentioned that there's scoring around it. Each board does have its own level 3 cafe built into the corners, as you can see here. You can place a field over those. It just means that no longer is a cafe. You've used that space for a field for resources, presumably for other cafes. Once you do that, you take a matching resource and put it onto the icon on that field. So I would take 2 coffees because there's 2 coffees here. I would take a cacao and a peanut. So I'll do the same over here. That is planting a field. You can't do both of those things. You're choosing. I should also mention that when you are planting a field, you can rotate the card any way you want. So I could do this. Now I'll be covering this cafe up, which, might not be in the world. But if you notice, I'm putting 2 cacao on top of cacao, which really means I would have 2. I just planted even more cacao. And then I would put in the vanilla and the peanuts. Let's say you wanted to plant a field of something different. So if I wanted to plant these 2 cacao on top of these 2 coffee beans, I would feed these 2 coffees to the chickens, which means I would go up 2 points on the chicken, and I will cover that up and then just put the coffee beans and the peanuts and the vanilla. Okay, the third action that players have an option of taking on their turn is to harvest crops. And harvesting crops means that you would discard the current card that you have in your hand in that round. Let's say fudge was the 3rd card that came out. So everybody has fudge. Keep in mind, I'm doing the same action with both players to sort of just to show you what it's like, but either player could do whatever they wish. So let's say everybody has fudge in them. So let's say the card that just came out for that particular round was fudge. So both players have a fudge card. They have an option of, making it into a cafe. They could plant it, or they could harvest it. So to harvest, that means you would discard the card that you took, and harvesting means you would take up all the resources for any one row or column. So 1 row or column. So you would get all these resources, and that would stay there, but you would get all those resources, and then you could distribute them to any empty ingredient spaces. These are ingredient spaces. Had player 2 made this a cafe on the side of their board, this would also be an ingredient space. So throughout the game, you're going to have a bunch of cafes around your board. And if you have not covered up the cafes built into your board, those are also spaces. They just only take one. So you have options. So I could put this here. I could put coffee here, the cacao here. I only have one place for coffee. I'll get into what this means in a second. Feeding the chickens. If you ever are in a position where you have a resource that cannot go onto anything, that you can no longer use on any of your cafes. So I could not place that coffee somewhere because there's already a coffee here and I only have one available to me right now. I do have another cacao, I don't have anything to put there. So when that happens, you would do what's called feed chicken. That happens after the action phase. That's actually after the scoring phase too. But I just mentioned it now because it seemed topical and relevant to do so. So those are the actions you can take. So now we get into the scoring phase. And scoring means that you would score points for every fulfilled cafe, meaning a cafe that has all of its spaces on it are populated. And you would score 1 point for every space. So right now, I would score 1 point for this cafe, and I would score another point for this cafe. That would be 2 points. The engine building part of this game comes into play because of the aforementioned levels. So all of the cafes built into your board are all level 3. The ones on the cards of the cafes that you're going to be putting down can just range. They can be 1, 2, or 3. So now I've scored. I scored 2 points, and I showed you previously that normally after the scoring phase, you have left over would go to feed the chicken, meaning you don't have a place to put that resource that's been used. You don't have a place to scale it down to. By scaling down, I mean this. So this cafe was a level 3. It needs coffee beans. It used those coffee beans. Now I have the option of taking the byproduct, and instead of just chucking it away and feeding the chickens, instead of feeding the chickens and moving the chickens up, I can go and use those. Now I can go and use the byproduct for vanilla lattes in this cafe, assuming I had other cafes out there. So this is a level 3. Now this is a level 2. So that's another option. And I could do, and let's say I had populated vanilla, I could go from this vanilla, if it was populated, to this level 2 vanilla. And the game is really about sequencing, because what I really want to do is build an engine where I have I have level 3s, 2s, and 1s of just about everything. So when I start off by harvesting and then populate level 3s, I can score those level 3s, bring them to level 2s, score again, bring them to level 1s, score again. And you can do all that in one round. And that's the beauty of the game. You're building an engine to take sweets from level 3 down to 2 down to 1, or down to 2 down to 1, or down to 3 down to 1. It always has to go down. The byproducts are interesting because that means you're taking resources and using them again and again until they're pretty much depleted. The chickens come into play. You're probably wondering, as you are going to be going down to level 1s, and then after that, you would put things back into the supply and then moving your chicken up. So let's say I had my chicken up to 6, and it's right here. Every 3 points the chicken has gives you an egg. So your turn, players could go down all the way to 3, or even down to 0. 3 and take 1 egg, or go down to 0 and take 2 eggs. Every 3 chicken points are an egg. And eggs are a wild resource. Eggs can be used on anything. I could take that egg and then satisfy this cafe and score it. Now, this is a level 2 coffee, which means I can now take that over to a level 1 and hopefully score that either right on that in that round or a subsequent round. However, once an egg is used, it just goes back to the supply, and you don't feed the chickens the eggs. That's cannibalism. You don't feed the chickens the eggs; they're just out. The eggs are used one time as a wild resource, and then they go away. You can't keep reusing eggs. But the other resources can scale down from 3 to 2, 3 to 1, 2 to 1. So you can definitely build a nice little engine and sort of just combo it up and have some really, really interesting turns. That's really the game. That's how it works. So ultimately, my final thoughts on Dulce are, I like the game. I think it's good. I just wish I was better at it. I played a good number of times, played solo a good number of times, and I understand how to play. I understand the rules. I just need to get really better about placing my various cafes in such a way where it makes sense. So I'm really scaling down from a level 3 to a 2 to a 1 much more efficiently, because I feel like I just kind of randomly place things, or I'll harvest at the wrong time. So that's not really the game's fault. That's just the way I'm playing it. Although, like I said, I did enjoy it. I do think it's fun. It's not something that I pull off the shelf frequently. And if I do pull it off the shelf, I'm more likely to be playing it solo than with someone else. Not because it's hard to teach. It's just, it's a good solo game. But to me, that's a benefit. I like the fact that the solo game is very much like the multiplayer game. You have your head down. You are focused on what your fields, your cafes. There really is there's no take that or anything. You were just focused on what you're doing. The interaction is, hey, what cards you get? Oh, it's 24. Okay, 24. Let me find my 24 and start to use it. Like, for some people, that would be a detractor. That would be like, oh, well, no, there's no play interaction. I don't like it. I like that. I don't have a problem with the fact that there's very little play interaction. But, this is a review. It's subjective. I like that. Other people might not. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Dulce. I think it's good. I think it's fun. So if you like desserts, like light engine building, you probably should check it out. If you hate engine building and like desserts, maybe don't check it out. If you like engine building and hate desserts, I recommend it. Why you hate desserts, I don't know. I shouldn't judge. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. Thank you for watching. Take care, stay safe, and be blessed.